It was supposed to be an ordinary flight, a short journey over calm skies, carrying 52 passengers and a crew of 5. The weather was perfect, visibility was clear, and every instrument in the cockpit read normal. But within an hour of takeoff, the world would lose all trace of that plane. No distress call, no radar blip, no debris. It simply vanished. Families waited. Governments searched. Reporters filled the airwaves with theories. Yet, for decades, the truth remained hidden beneath layers of silence and time. Until one day, 50 years later, a discovery deep in the wilderness would reopen the wound day and rewrite everything we thought we knew about what really happened that day. The year was 1973. Flight 914 took off from Caracas, Venezuela, bound for Miami, Florida. It was a bright morning, and the passengers settled into their seats, chatting, reading, or staring out at the endless blue. The captain, a man with over 20 years of flight experience, radioed control to confirm his route. Everything was as it should be. Then, somewhere over the Caribbean Sea, the impossible happened. The plane's transponder stopped responding. 1 minute it was on radar, the next gone. Air traffic control tried to reach the pilot. No answer. They scrambled jets to search the area. Nothing. No oil slicks, no debris, no emergency signals. It was as if the plane had been erased from existence. For weeks, search teams scoured the ocean. Families watched in agony as hope slowly turned into despair. Officially, the plane was declared lost at sea. But even as the world moved on, a few people never stopped looking. There were whispers among local fishermen of strange lights over the water, of hearing a low drone at night when no aircraft should have been flying. Some said they'd seen a massive object plunge into the jungle far inland, swallowed by trees. But no one could find anything. The story faded until the summer of 2023. Half a century later, a small team of archaeologists exploring a dense, uncharted part of the Amazon stumbled upon something metallic. At first, they thought it was part of an old mining operation. But when they brushed away the vines and soil, they saw windows around, fogged over with decades of decay and a broken wing buried in mud. The markings on the tail were barely visible, but when sunlight hit them just right, the numbers came alive. N3794L. Flight 914. The plane that vanished 50 years ago. The team radioed their discovery, and within hours, the site was sealed off by local authorities. Word spread fast. Was this really the same aircraft? When investigators arrived, they were stunned. The fuselage was mostly intact. Despite the years, the cockpit's door was still shut. Inside, they found luggage, seats, and the rusted remains of the control panel lay frozen in time. But what sent chills down every spine wasn't the wreck itself. It was what they found inside. In the front cabin, the seats were still upright, some with decayed uniforms, others with bones still strapped in by seat belts. It was as if the plane had landed itself. Papers were scattered across the floor, old flight manifests, crew logs, and a weather chart dated March 21, 1973. But there was one thing no one could explain: the state of preservation. Despite being in one of the harshest climates on Earth, the wreckage looked like it had only been there for a few years. Metal that should have been rusted through was still solid. Fabrics that should have rotted away still clung to the frame. The investigators couldn't understand it. The black box, if it still existed, was the key. After several days of careful searching, they found it lodged deep within the tail section. When it was sent for analysis, the data stunned everyone. The last recorded message from the pilot was ordinary, a calm acknowledgement of a weather update. Then, abruptly, the instruments went haywire. The altimeter spun out of control. The compass reversed direction. Static filled the radio. And then, silence. The next sound was a faint, distorted voice repeating a phrase over and over: "We're not where we should be." Experts tried to explain the phenomenon. Maybe an electrical storm, or magnetic interference from the Earth's field. But when the recording was cleaned up, a background sound became clear, a rhythmic hum, low and mechanical, nothing like any natural or aircraft noise. Some speculated it was turbulence, others weren't so sure. A few scientists privately suggested something far stranger, that the plane might have crossed into what's known as a temporal disturbance, a rip in the atmosphere where time itself flows differently. When the wreckage was compared to photographs from 1973, the similarities were exact except for one thing. The flight's clock in the cockpit had stopped at 2:12 p.m. but when checked, the internal chronometer showed that only 3 minutes had passed from the moment the plane disappeared to the moment it landed in the jungle. 3 minutes. Yet 50 years had passed in the real world. What happened during those missing moments? As news broke, people around the world were captivated. Survivors' families came forward, some too old to believe what they were hearing. One woman, now in her 70s, wept when shown a photograph of a silver locket recovered from the wreck, the same one her husband wore when he boarded the flight. For her, the mystery was both solved and deepened. If the plane truly had crashed in 1973, why hadn't search teams found it? Why had it looked untouched for decades? And what was that strange signal the black box had recorded? Soon, government agencies stepped in. A joint task force quietly arrived, removed several crates from the site, and refused to answer questions. Local villagers reported seeing helicopters flying at night, and men in dark uniforms taking soil samples. Then, suddenly, access to the area was restricted. The official explanation claimed it was to protect a historical site, but journalists weren't convinced. Leaked documents hinted that the magnetic field around the crash site was unlike anything ever measured. Compasses spun, batteries drained, and drones malfunctioned. Something about that location defied logic. A month later, an anonymous video appeared online, supposedly recorded by one of the original archaeologists before the site was sealed. The shaky footage showed the cockpit in remarkable condition, the dials frozen mid-flight, and through the cracked windshield, something glowing faintly outside. It wasn't sunlight, it pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, coming from deep beneath the ground. The video ended abruptly, but for those few seconds, the world glimpsed something terrifying, a shimmer in the air, like heat distortion, bending the trees around it. Many dismissed it as fake. Others believed it was evidence that whatever swallowed Flight 914 was still there, waiting. Over the next several weeks, scientists began connecting dots. The region where the plane was found had long been home to strange phenomena, lost explorers, magnetic anomalies, even uncharted ancient ruins. Satellite images revealed geometric patterns beneath the jungle floor, too precise to be natural. Some theorized the crash site wasn't random. Perhaps the plane had been drawn there, pulled towards something. In a closed-door briefing, one researcher described it as an atmospheric fold, a place where Earth's layers of space and time briefly overlap. According to his model, under certain electromagnetic conditions, a craft could slip between these layers and emerge elsewhere, or else when. He was laughed at by many of his peers, but others quietly admitted that no conventional explanation fit. How else could a plane vanish for 50 years and reappear almost untouched? Meanwhile, the recovered flight recorder continued to reveal more. Just before the instruments failed, the pilot's voice was heard again. His tone had changed. "We're seeing lights, bright, above the waterline. They're moving too fast, a broken bar, I think, where the message cuts off there." But analysts noticed something strange. At the end of the tape, a new signal appears, coordinates. When plotted, they pointed not to the Amazon, but to a location thousands of miles away, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. A location long associated with another unsolved mystery, the Bermuda Triangle. The connection sent shockwaves through the aviation world. Could Flight 914 have entered a spatial anomaly and re-emerged in South America decades later? The idea seemed impossible, until one final clue surfaced. Hidden inside the pilot's briefcase, preserved by time, was a folded navigation map. It was a standard 1970s chart, except for one impossible detail. Someone had drawn a route line that continued far beyond the Caribbean, looping back over South America, ending precisely where the plane had been found. The ink was faded, but a small note at the bottom remained legible: we saw the future. That phrase sparked endless debate. Did the pilot somehow know what was happening? Had he glimpsed something beyond time itself? Or was it just the delirium of a man lost and desperate? We may never know. What we do know is that the plane was real, the evidence undeniable, and yet official reports quickly vanished. Within months, all information related to the recovery was classified. The area was declared off limits. The archaeologists who discovered the site reportedly signed confidentiality agreements, and the wreckage was quietly transported to an undisclosed facility. For the world, the mystery of Flight 914 returned to silence, but this time, people were watching. Independent researchers, historians, and pilots began piecing together what little they could. Using declassified radar data from the 1970s, they discovered that several other flights reported electrical interference on the same day the plane vanished. 2 ships in the Atlantic also logged compass failures around the same hour. It was as if something massive had shifted in the planet's magnetic field just for a moment. One physicist proposed a chilling theory, that Flight 914 had flown through a temporal displacement bubble, a kind of natural wormhole that opens unpredictably. Inside it, time may pass differently. Minutes inside could equal decades outside. If that were true, the crew might have experienced only a few moments of turbulence before crashing, never realizing that 50 years had passed. The condition of the plane seemed to support this, almost frozen in time, as if it had never aged. But not everyone agreed. Some believed the story was a government cover-up for a failed experiment, perhaps involving early radar or navigation systems. Others suggested alien interference, pointing to similar disappearances near high-energy anomalies around the globe. The truth remained buried beneath conflicting stories and silent authorities. As the months passed, the jungle began to reclaim the site once more. Vines crept over the fuselage, insects filled the cabins, and rainwater pooled where the cockpit once gleamed. Nature was slowly erasing the last traces of the mystery. But one man, a retired Air Force technician who had worked on early radar systems, came forward with something extraordinary. He claimed that in 1973, the night Flight 914 disappeared. He was monitoring experimental tracking frequencies. At precisely the same time the plane vanished from civilian radar, his monitor picked up a single, strong signal, a pulse, not from the Caribbean, but from deep within South America. It lasted exactly 3 minutes, then disappeared forever. If his story is true, it means the plane didn't vanish into thin air. It reappeared immediately, but far away, displaced through something beyond our understanding. And for 50 years, it lay hidden, waiting to be found. Today, the legend of Flight 914 lives on, a haunting reminder that even in our age of satellites and science, the skies still hold secrets. The cockpit clock, now displayed under tight security, remains stopped at 2:12 p.m., the moment when time itself seemed to fracture. The passengers, long gone, have become part of a mystery that transcends generations. When we look at the wreck, rusted and silent, we're reminded of one simple truth: the world is vast, and our understanding of it is fragile. Somewhere, perhaps high above the clouds or deep beneath the ground, there may still be echoes of that flight, a plane caught between moments, forever lost, yet never truly gone. And maybe, just maybe, one day another discovery will prove that the impossible is not only real but waiting to happen again.